Well, that seemed like it was going to take forever then. Hello, it's Graham Cofe with My Music. Welcome to another recording or live or whatever it is. Actually, it's just out in the ether, going around the interweb, making everybody happy. But it is a conversation with Ellur about music, and we'll be coming back straight after this. Ellur, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Where are you coming from?
Halifax.
Halifax, which is what it says in your bio. So I wouldn't expect anything less. But sometimes people say, "Oh, well, no, actually, I've travelled part of the world before I do this, etc." How is Halifax?
It's all right. The snow's just about melted from the past couple of days. I live like quite high up, so there's been a lot of snow. But yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, love a bit of snow. We've got bright sunshine down here in the southwest at the moment. So
Wow, I'm jealous.
Yeah, completely different.
Gloomy.
What's it like growing up in Halifax in terms of like the music scene, etc.? What's that like up there?
The music scene's it's always been pretty like prominent, but more like recently in like the most recent years, it's really kind of spiked. They had like a venue. Well, there's the Peace Hall in Halifax, which like was launched as a music venue, like just after it reopened. They had all these renovations done to it, and then they relaunched it as a music venue as well as like a market, which is what it used to be, like a merchant's place. And that was a couple of years ago, and then since then it's kind of really put Halifax on the map for like musicians, and there's a lot of independent music venues in and around Halifax as well. There's the Greyston Unity, who are really keen to like, help up and coming artists, and they host like a grassroots festival as well in Halifax now called Town, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's kind of like started popping off, like
I love
around
that term, popping off. Well, the thing is, we need that, and actually, we need it in other areas as well because
yeah,
I don't know whether you've like followed the news over the past year or so, but the amount of small venues that are closing on the music scene, it's a pretty dire situation, isn't it? So
it's difficult, especially for like smaller artists like myself, who like we're not, artists like me, we're not really getting the streams and the kind of, we're not getting as noticed in order to play bigger venues. So when the smaller venues shut, it impacts the smaller artists because they're then having to strive to get numbers as big as the big artists just in order to play gigs. So for smaller venues to stay open, it keeps people wanting to do music and choose it as a career. It's definitely really important.
There's also that philosophy in that as well, which is that it's kind of short-sighted because actually all of those big artists started at small venues, and if you don't kind of learn how to do what you do really well at all the small venues, then who's going to be playing the big venues later on? That's why several people are campaigning now for the bigger venues to start putting money back into the smaller venues. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think so, yeah. I mean, like, given the current climate and economy, it is kind of a thing of like, if smaller projects and smaller venues and whatever are going to stay afloat, there is like there's monetary support that's required, because it's kind of like a bit of a spiral in the sense that if the smaller venues don't have the money to promote the gigs, then they won't have the revenue from the gigs in order to put the gigs on, if you know what I mean. So
yeah.
I think definitely, I think that there probably are issues with smaller venues wanting to be independent of the bigger venues, but I don't know. I suppose it's trying to find like a middle ground between staying independent but also having the funding that's required in order to put gigs on.
Now, I like the fact you said that one of the venues in Halifax is like a marketplace as well, because you've got, because I was saying just before we came on, we were talking about mugs. We were showing each other our mugs, and this is a mug from an artist that's been on before. But you've got your own merch as well, so that's nice. Do you get to like do the old market thing with your merch at the same time as play a gig when you play that?
So the Peace Hall itself is actually like a pretty big venue. It's taken over the summer by a promoter called Cuff and Taylor, who basically I think they put gigs on at the Peace Hall, and then I think they do somewhere on the seaside. I think is it Blackpool or maybe Scarborough? I'm not sure. But they have been putting on some like really big artists, like I think Grace Jones is coming this summer, and like Blondie, and I got to support Embrace there last summer, which was amazing. And then obviously with that, then they kind of look after the merch side of things and the bar and everything. So, but it does bring like a lot of tourism to Halifax, which is really cool. So, but in terms of your question about the merch, it was just like the same as selling at any venue like the O2 or anything like merch.
Do you always do your own merch stand, or do you get someone to do it for you?
Yeah, I like because of budgets and things, I don't have the money to spend on paying a merch seller, but also I think like this early on in my career, like my favorite part of the night is standing at the merch stand at the end of my set and at the end of the gig and just meeting people and like really kind of, it feels weird, it feels like a sales pitch. It's like not necessarily pushing people to buy my merch, but just like give us a follow, like check us out if you, because it's usually I'm doing support slots at the minute, so when you're supporting an artist, it's like the aim of the job is to warm the crowd up for the gig, but then also try and get as many people on board with what you're doing as you can. I think it's important. I think it's something that like I want to try do for as long as I can as well. Just like meeting people after, and I just love that part of it and getting to chat to people.
I'm too old now, but if I was back when I was in a band in the 90s, etc., if I had my time again, I think I would carry on doing the merch stand even if I became famous. I just think it'd be a really cool thing to do. In fact, I think what I would probably do is I would probably do it for the support band as well. I'd probably go, don't buy my album, buy the support band's album, because you probably bought mine anyway.
Well, I just went on the tour with the Pigeon Detectives in November.
Oh, wonderful!
Did a full tour with them. Honestly, they're so down to earth and they were so welcoming. And Matt, the lead singer, Matt Bowman, wore my T-shirt to like I think 3 of the gigs when he was performing, and at those 3 gigs, my sales, like merch sales, because I obviously do it all myself, were like triple what they would have been. And like he even said on stage, like, as you can see, this is a really cool T-shirt. Don't bother buying the Pigeon Detectives T-shirt. They're a rip-off. Go buy Ellur's. They're like half price or something. And obviously he was joking because, merch is like the number one thing that makes artists and bands any money, which I always say is a bit backwards.
He was just wanting to help, though. He was wanting to help.
He just gets it. They get it. Like they're a great band, and they were great as like a first sort of one of the first support tours that I've done, because they just get what doing a support tour is about, and they get what you're trying to achieve, and they just really like backed me in the band and backed us up with that. So it was really nice.
Yeah, you're getting some very good support slots, aren't you? Very good.
Yeah, I'm like really excited. I love doing support gigs. Just because like, I mean, not only do you get to meet the artists usually, unless they're very busy, but just like the people that you meet. And like, because I've got an agent now, you know, the support slots, they're always sort of the fans of the people who I support are usually going to be people who would be fans of my music as well. So you're always meeting people that are at least somewhat interested in what you're doing. I don't think I've ever really done a support slot where I was like, you know, the fans just weren't connecting. In fact, I've done one support slot when I very, very early on, and it was like for this like heavy metal band, I think.
Yeah.
And I got up and I was on my own and I was singing my like soppy love ballads. It just didn't land well. But that was very early days. That was pre-agent and management and stuff.
It's so important to get it right. I think generally people are quite open music wise now in terms of what they will listen to at a gig, you know, and people don't mind if there's quite a variety in terms of the type of music that they listen to, but there's just certain things that just don't go together. I've said it famously on here before, but we were signed to a punk label and we played numerous, and we were kind of a, you know, shoegazy kind of indie band, and we played several gigs where you know, we were put on with very hardcore punk bands and it just didn't work at all, you know, because people were there for a riot, and then you know, when the final band come on and like they're singing harmonies and stuff, it's just like, you know, it's then you run for your life because the people start throwing bottles and stuff, not because you were bad, but just because you just weren't what they wanted on the evening. And you can kind of understand that, really.
I wouldn't throw a bottle at a band that I wasn't into. I'd probably just leave, but each to their own.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Has there been anyone you've done a support slot for so far that you've, you know, been able to talk to about writing or learn anything musically from?
Well, I mean, a lot of people. I got to support one of my favorite artists, Holly Humberstone, back in like November 2022, and that was surreal because like up until that point I'd been like talking about how much I love her music and how much she's had an influence on my music and stuff. So to meet her and just, I mean, I had so many questions to ask her, and then we ended up talking about pork pies or something, just because I was so nervous. But yeah, that's such a good question, because I've met quite a few. I mean, that same night I met the other support act called Benjamin Francis Leftwich, and he's like,
oh right,
yeah, he's like a really sort of great songwriter. Written a lot with Holly, written a lot with like a lot of bands and artists that I really love. He spent so much time just like talking to me before my sound check, and like I think he could tell I was a bit nervous, so he sat and chatted to me for ages, and then a couple of months later got in touch with me about doing some writing sessions, and I've had the chance to write with him. I've done a couple of writing days with him, and we're going to try and set some more up this year.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a really cool thing because I love his music anyway, and then to sort of chat to him, just chinwagging. It wasn't anything like, you know, we were just like having a normal conversation, which was greater than small talk, but you know, nothing like too deep. It was just really nice.
No, but went beyond pork pies.
Yeah, because I was nervous to meet him as well, but Holly I'd just been like talking about for years. So
I just love the image of like, you know, you've almost got that list of like things that, you know, how do you construct a middle eight, and it just turns into like, do you like the ones with the jelly in, or
I think we ended up like talking about. I'm a vegetarian as well, so I don't even know how we got onto it.
Do you like the pork pies that don't have pork in? You know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I honestly can barely even remember anything that was said in the conversation. I just remember being so starstruck. But yeah, she's really great. She was really lovely. Like, you know, had a lot of time for me. You know, because a headline band isn't like obliged to speak to a support act at all. But as a support artist, you remember the ones that kind of make the time for you, I think. And I always try really hard when I'm playing to, you know, if there's another support on the bill that's, you know, then I'll make sure to go see them, like if we have time, and or you know, like I've got some headline shows coming up, and I'll make an effort to make sure I see the support slot sets and stuff, just because it's so important.
Well, I actually did some work with a band last year and found out that at certain festivals, for example, sometimes within the contract it actually says you're not entitled to talk to the main band. And I think that's awful.
What, like, as in, like, if
It's
you sign
actually,
this contract, you're not
yeah,
allowed to speak to the headline
it
band?
actually says, it actually says in the contracts, like, no sort of like, speaking to, fraternizing with the main band backstage or whatever, and you just think, what?
Yeah, I don't know, because I see from a point of view of like being a headline act and like playing like a pretty big show. Like, I mean, I've played some shows and it's like, it's so scary before you go on stage.
You need
Like,
to get in your headspace.
Yeah, like I always, if I'm going to watch another support and I'm supporting as well, I'll watch the first couple of songs, but I don't want to see like the size of the audience or people in the audience. If I see anyone I know, I get like really nervous, and I'm not very sociable before I go on stage, just because like I'm it's nerves more than anything. But I think as like, as a quite an established band and a big band, I don't know, I can't speak for them, I suppose, because
I
I'm
just
not.
think sometimes, and nothing against
I wouldn't
management,
make anyone sign a contract to not speak.
well, I
to
just
me.
think sometimes people, not artists necessarily, but people in the music industry just go a little bit too far with all of this stuff. Do you know what I mean? I can't remember what the guy's name is, but I remember coming across this guy last summer on Instagram, and he kind of writes stuff and plays it on the guitar or like ukulele or whatever, and then he tries to get in front of more famous musicians to play his song, and he did.
Right.
I don't know whether you've seen this, but he did one where he kind of runs up to Fred again as he's coming off stage backstage, and like all the security, like,
Oh, I might have seen this.
yeah, and they jump on him and sort of go, no, you can't do alert. And Fred again's like, hey, hang on, just let him do it, just let him play. And sometimes you just think it's not the musician that's saying that, because generally, I understand, musicians do want their space and there's a time and everything else, but generally, musicians are so actually into music that if someone's actually going to bring something creative to them, they actually just want to listen. They just want to be in that space as well. So
yeah, and also like every single musician has been at a point where they were looking for their shot and their chance, and if someone approaches them and is like, oh, if you want to like ever listen to my music, you can find it here, or if you ever want to write a song, like, just, it's kind of about like taking a chance, I think, and every musician can appreciate that. And like,
absolutely. Now listen, one of the reasons I found you was because you've got a song that's about satellites, and satellites are great thing to write about, because some of the best songs ever have been about satellites. I almost thought I'd do a quiz with you where you could name songs about satellites, but I won't be cool and make you do that. But have you got any other favorite songs about satellites?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. To be honest with you, that's my honest answer. I know that there's a song by Harry Styles called Satellite.
Yeah.
But I've not actually heard it.
Lou Reed, Satellite of Love, and then you've got yes,
of course.
And then as I was growing up, it was Tasmin Archer with her song about satellites. Yeah,
I've not heard that song.
Wow.
But maybe I need to like make a playlist of songs about satellites.
I think you should. I think you should make a song about satellites, and then pop yours in the middle of it, and then it'll be like a whole playlist.
And then just like get people who are really interested in like NASA and space to listen to my song.
To do all of that sort of thing. In fact, you could get NASA to endorse it. What gave you the inspiration?
So it was written with another writer called Dan Breyer. He's written with Niall Horan and Liam Payne and Tom Grennan and like a lot of people, but just those are some people that he's written with. really like well-established writer, and he's just like so kind of focused, and but in like a non like no pressure way, if you know what I mean. I've been doing some writing sessions. I try to go to London like once a month or so to do writing sessions with people. Like the outcome of the sessions, and I like how it kind of helps me develop as a writer when I'm on my own as well. But I was writing with him, and I'd sort of said to him like, I've had a really good week of writing. We've written like 2 really big pop bangers with these 2 other writers that I'd written with, and I just really want a song that's like going to be. I referenced this Joni Mitchell song called Both Sides Now, which she's actually just performed at the Grammys, but she did the orchestral version of some of her early stuff in like 2000 and then performed it with the orchestra. And there's a performance of her singing Both Sides Now, which she wrote when she was like 22.
Yeah.
And then performed it when she was like 50 or 60 odd. At this with this orchestra, and like you could just tell like how these words that she'd written were so timeless, that something that she said and meant when she was 22 meant something totally different when she was like, 40 years later or whatever. And I just thought that was so like, it was honestly, I watched the videos back to back because I've heard the orchestral album and I was like, wow. And I said to him, I was like, this is kind of the song I want to start writing songs that I'm not gonna hate
I'm
in
gonna
like
get
5 years
older.
time. Yeah. I like kind of writing with intention, and my early stuff I used to write, and I was kind of just writing because I wanted to be a musician and I wanted to be a pop star and I wanted to, and that's fine. Like I don't judge myself for that, but I think like now I'm a couple of years into this and I kind of want to look back on my songs, and every year they kind of become something different for me, rather than like songs that I look back on and I'm like, what was I talking about? What does that mean? Like, so I think that was kind of the inspiration for it.
It's part of it as well, having a song that you can very much like Both Sides Now, where actually you can actually deliver it in a very different way at a different part in your career, and you can almost emphasize it in a different way, and you can breathe new life into it again. Whereas actually if you make a pop song, sometimes it's a pop song, and there's nothing wrong, as you say, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it's quite difficult to then do anything particularly different with it.
Yeah, I think like for me, pop music was something really different to me when I first started writing music. I really didn't want to be labeled as a pop artist, but I also didn't want to be labeled as an indie artist, and I was like, I'm not gonna be labeled or whatever. And then actually like now pop to me is just about like, if it's a catchy song, like it doesn't necessarily mean to me that it has to be about heartbreak or whatever, which is what it used to mean to me. Now it's just kind of like, if people hear it once and they're humming it, then it's pop song, if you know what I mean. But that song, like initially Satellites, was, I'm really into Coldplay. I always have been really into Coldplay, and it was going to be this big sort of early Coldplay-esque banger, like I wanted it to be sort of like In My Place, or like from like the first sort of 2 albums from like Parachutes and stuff. Like I really wanted this big drums and all these like kind of big riffs and stuff, and those 2 are pop albums, and I wanted it to be like that. And me and Dan were like sort of planning how that was going to look, and then I sent it my managers, and the demo was just literally me, a piano, and the little string thing that Dan had sort of just put on there for some emphasis. And they were like, no, I think like you should really drive home like just honor the demo, and we'll just record it with a string quartet, and it'll be like a proper ballad. And then I kind of heard what they'd heard, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what it needs to be. So maybe in 40 years time I'll do it as a big band indie thing and just do the reverse of what
I like
Joni
that
Mitchell
idea.
did.
I like that idea. I had had the Deep Blue on the other week. I don't know whether you've come across them, and we were talking about the Bad Shepherds, which was Ade Edmondson's band, where he did Ade Edmondson married to Jennifer Saunders, part of French and Saunders, and with the Bad Shepherds, he'd do punk songs in a folk style or folk songs in the punk style.
I like that.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah. I always think things like that kind of open up great possibilities for where you can go with music. What lies ahead in terms of creativity? Do you feel that there's something you haven't explored yet, which you'd love to explore? Maybe, more kind of avant-garde, electronic sounds, different type of production?
Yeah, I think I'm currently working on my first album. I think that's something I've never explored, is kind of like creating. I mean, I've released EPs and things, but again, they've just kind of been like, here's the songs that I've written recently that I'm most proud of. Whereas this, I want it to kind of feel like a body of work that's cohesive and I find exciting and things like that. And yeah, some of the songs that I've demoed or I've recorded for that, they're kind of a little bit more like the stuff that I'm moving into is a little bit more inspired by like the likes of early Coldplay, but also like Radiohead, and but mixing that with kind of like more current like modern female artists like Holly Humberstone and the Japanese House and Haim and things like that. One of my all-time favorite artists is Sharon Van Etten. And like I'm really into that kind of like powerful vocal delivery that's kind of like in a deeper register, but it's so like, to me, that is so like feminine and like womanly, if you know what I mean.
And a raw but clean guitar sound and
yeah. I'm really into the Sundays as well. I've been really into them. But
Sundays, fantastic.
Yeah, honestly, I've been listening to Reading, Writing and Arithmetic just like on repeat, and I've never really been an album person. I've always been a playlist person. Like I just make playlists and then listen to those playlists once a month. But at the minute, I've just been listening to like back-to-back albums from like that sort of era, and I'm just like absorbed in it all. So maybe I'll write more stuff like that in the future as well.
Oh, I hope so. That's one of the most underestimated albums of all time, I think. What a fantastic album that actually is. Brilliant. That whole period that had some great atmospheric music, really, which had lovely little pop tunes in it, but it wasn't quite so obvious, and I quite like that. And actually, I do feel we're seeing that come back round again.
Yeah, I think so. I'm really interested at the moment in trying to like control how I consume stuff a little bit more, because I think like the way the current kind of technological world is, it's really easy to kind of just look for things that you find interesting, because that's what's being pushed to us at all times. It's just like constant reams and reams and reams of things that are like, oh, do I like it? No, I don't, within the first 3 seconds, and then scroll. Or, if I listen to a song for the first 3 seconds and I don't like it, I'll skip it. I'm trying not to do that. And like, so which is why I think I'm turning a little bit more to like I can't remember who I was listening. I think I was listening to this podcast the other day. It was I listened to this podcast called Blind Boy, and he'd had Johnny Marr as a guest on his podcast. It was like a live recorded podcast, and they were talking about how like you can't consume music in the same way as you could in the 90s. And like in the 90s, you bought an album, and if you didn't like it, you just listened to it until you did like it, because it cost you like 20 quid, and like that was like 2 weeks savings. And Blind Boy was talking about how he'd saved up for this Daft Punk album and he hated it. But he listened to it that much that it became like ingrained in his music taste, and now like he really likes that sort of music just because he'd saved up for like a month in order to buy this CD.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about it quite a few times on here. I think it's I actually think it was really healthy as well, because what it did was it kind of developed your ability to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you first put something on and you go, I really don't like it, but I really want to like it, and there's always normally something in there that grabs your attention and makes you feel like you should come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And working at listening, it's
Mm-hmm.
no different from any kind of conversation, is it?
Yeah.
Working at listening is a really important skill, because
Yeah.
learning to be able to appreciate those little nuances of something that is in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think like as a writer as well, and I've become really interested in production, especially since I've started doing like writing sessions, because a lot of the time I'm writing with writer producers. And I just love kind of picking up on little nuanced things that they do. Like you'll write with people and like they go, "Oh, this is my favorite little technique," and they'll just put like something in there that's just gonna give like it might just give the demo that lift that when you send it to the label or whoever that you've got involved in your project, they go, "Wow!" But if you'd have just sent it as, the bones of the song, it might have not caught their attention as much. And I think that's why I've loved like starting to listen to albums like that reading, writing and arithmetic. Like I was really into like 3 songs off that album, and I was in London in December and I was just listening to the album on repeat. And then like by the time I'd come home from London and I'd been listening to it, it was a completely different 3 songs that I was interested in. And it was like it was just like a song that captured my attention because of the drums. I just loved the way that the drums were mixed in the track. Or then there was another one and it was because I just loved the lyrics. Do you know what I mean? I think like listening to music with an ear of like knowing how much work goes into the decision making when it comes to the recording and producing of like work, that I think it would be a crime to just like constantly be like, okay, I'm going to put my playlist on and I'm going to listen to my songs that I like, and instead of kind of like trying to understand and um I don't know, just like it's just an appreciation for the art of it, I guess.
Yeah. Sometimes artists these days also struggle with the fact though that there is so much music out there and it's all coming at you left, right and center all of the time. There's so many reference points that gets quite confusing. I don't know, is this something you do as well? But there's been a number of artists that have found that the way through that is to take yourself off to a space as well, or to look in a look at a place, for example, as opposed to necessarily a musical space, but a physical space. I'm thinking of artists that have taken themselves off. You probably haven't done this yet, but it will all come in your career. The desert, or
Right, I see what you're saying.
a different country or somewhere else, in order to find a different physical space, in order to create something that comes out from that space.
Yeah,
Sound wise, you know what I
I
mean
think,
by that?
yeah, definitely. I think like I said, I've been going to London like um pretty much once a month for the past like year and a half, maybe even 2 years. And doing writing. And I think like, I mean, London's massive. Like, and it's not even like I always laugh at how like big like the UK feels, but then I've just read On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and he's talking about how like they traveled between 2 states and it took them 5 hours, and that's like from here to London. Do you know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
London feels miles away, but actually like,
So
but
are there
London
songs?
is just huge.
So are there songs on the album that sound more London and some that sound more Halifax? There's a good question for you.
um I think because I have such an involvement in the kind of production side of things and decisions, that I think it's more about, at the minute for me, it's more about the kind of internal world that's going on. And I've been very careful to not really have an ego when it comes to being a writer, but also like I spent a lot of time last year deciding what my brand was as an artist. I've never really been that focused on that side of things. But then it came to like I had like a conversation with someone and they asked me like, what do you want out of being a musician? What do you want out of being an artist? And I like couldn't answer, not because I didn't know, but just because I hadn't really thought about it like actually consciously. I knew in the back of my mind. So I just spent ages like deciding who I am like as a person and who I am as an artist and
They
trying
did
to
the
figure
whole
out.
massive transformational purpose bit with you. Say,
Yeah.
what is Ella?
Yeah,
What's Ella?
exactly.
What is Ella in the world? What does Ella give to the world? What's the purpose of Ella? What are your
Yeah.
values?
I
Yeah.
spent a long time like on it, and I even, it sounds really goofy, but I made like a PowerPoint presentation that I was like, I'm not
To
going to show
yourself.
anyone this. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
a mood board, kind of like vision board thing of like what I want. And then from that, I've been able to make decisions better in writing sessions. You know, when I'm working with other people, being able to say, no, I wouldn't say that, or yeah, that is something I'd say. And just being able to channel kind of authenticity a little bit. So I think in answer to your question about does it sound more London or Halifax, I think it's not really either. It's just kind of more that every song so far that I've explored they've all been like,
It sounds very Ella.
yeah, little parts of me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's good. That's a good thing. Yeah. There's never any right or wrong answers, by the way, on any of these questions. It's no, exactly. I'm very good at throwing questions out there where people go, oh gosh, is there a right or wrong answer now? No, but there's not. But the answer always lies in the question. Always. You know, but it's good to ask yourself questions, and it sounds like you've been doing that. It sounds like you've been really considering, you know, what you want, who you think that you are, and that really helps the whole artist development thing. Full stop, doesn't it?
It's definitely helped me as an artist, but it's also just helped me like in my personal life a lot. I've always found that I'm kind of someone that kind of struggles with like sometimes struggles with difficult situations, whether that be, you know, a disagreement with someone or it just be, is this me? Is this how I feel? How do I feel about that? I've always kind of struggled up until very recently with being able to go, that's how I feel about that, or I feel good about this, or I feel bad about this, or whatever. And I think like being able to access it from the point of view of me just being an artist has really helped me access it in my personal life as well, which has then in turn led to some really interesting new songs that I'm kind of like excited about. And I kind of like, I've got a very like, I feel like there's two types of people. There's like people who like have English centric brains, and then there's people who have like mathematics centric brains.
Okay,
You know,
cool. Yeah, I understand.
so
what you're saying.
you think like, I was talking to my friend about it the other day. If you think like sound engineer, I would say that's more like mathematical kind of problem solving. It's very, very like creative. Both sides are very, very creative, but that's a very like problem solving math side of things. And then like English is kind of like the lighting side of things do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what
It
you're
made
saying.
sense when I was talking about it the other day.
No. I know exactly what you're saying, because I firmly sit on the English side of things. And going back to what I was saying a minute ago, like most of my content is about conversation, and it's about it's actually about getting people to think. Yeah, because I want it to be a dialogue. I believe that you move forward because of a dialogue, and therefore, you know, one of the things I say is that we can't ever find a truth, but if we talk about it, we get closer to truths, if that makes sense. Yeah, and that is that's a very English thing. Whereas, you know, an engineer has to have an absolute answer at the end of the day. You want something to sound like something. They might use very creative ways to get there, but there's an actual outcome. You're probably quite happy then to leave things being a little bit woolly in a way. because it
Yeah,
doesn't really matter.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I was saying about having like an English centric brain, it's something that like I've figured out kind of about myself, and have since like really lent into it when it comes to like anything, any decision I make to do with being a musician, whether it's songwriting, whether it's music videos. I kind of like the consideration and the kind of organization of it. If you think like back when I was doing like my English A level, it was like there's that joke, isn't there, of like your English teacher saying that, well, why were the curtains blue? Why was the room blue? It's because she was sad. And it's like that's a very basic way of saying it, but it's that kind of thing of like, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? You know, writing songs that have like got all these kind of like hidden meanings in just for me, like, you know, kind of like putting in choices of like whether I say you or whether I say he or she, or do you know what I mean? And I think like I've gone from kind of just writing because it feels good and writing about what feels like it should be, to like trying to write every day and, you know, not being able to write those songs that just kind of come out of nowhere, because that does happen as well, sometimes. But like because I want to write every day, it's like, okay, well, yesterday I wrote this song and it just kind of fell out of me and it was this really cool song, and I've sent it off to people and I really like it. What process happened for me to write that song that I can kind of mimic today, if you know what I mean? Or, you know, I was talking to someone the other day about how like I even like when I'm writing, especially in co-writing sessions, because it's a lot more, I feel like the kind of playing field is a lot wider when you're writing in co-writing sessions. I'm like, okay, can we do something here where there's an instrumental break and I can literally picture it on stage and I'm having a moment with the guitarist or the keyboard player, or do you know what I mean? And I think like,
Yeah.
I love all that side of things, like really geeking out about it.
I think that's marvelous. I think it's I'm very excited to hear the whole album now when it comes out. Do you have a title for it yet? Obviously you don't need to tell us, but do you have a title?
No, it's very, very early stages. Like, you know, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
That's
Do you
all
know
I
what
can
will
say.
happen is you'll come off this interview and like within 5 minutes you'll go, actually, I've got a title for that now. It's just you know,
Yeah,
the creative juices have been going, and you
creative
know,
flow. Yeah.
yeah, been thinking about that, and that now, yeah, I totally understand what I'm going to call it. Well, I look forward to it, as will other people who are listening. Been a pleasure, absolutely, speaking to you today.
Thanks for having me.
And you're bringing back bobble hats as well, without the bobble, which
I
is,
made this actually.
did you make it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
very impressed.
I'm gonna plug this. I have a side project aside from doing music, which is a small source of income, which is a small business that I run, which is making knitted hats. I didn't wear it to
Oh,
promote it, but I thought you mentioned it, so I'm gonna bring it up.
I
So if
love
you want to
that.
buy one, they're
Yeah.
on Etsy.
Hey, I'll tell you what, there's a title right there, right? Yeah, there's a title right there in that, you know, something about knitwear. And I
Yeah.
think we could delve into that and pull out a title for a song, something
Mhm.
about knitting people together, something
Ooh,
about, yeah, it's just wonderful.
should write that
It's been,
down.
yeah, you should. Right, well, you won't need to, because we've recorded it, and you can go back and watch it. Folks, please do check out Ellur's music. Best place to go is your website, I would guess, because from there they can find all of the different socials, etc. And they can also go and buy some of your merch as well, which would be marvelous. There are tote bags. There are what else was there? The t-shirts, black ones, white ones, some as
Yes,
big as your head.
there's t-shirts, totes, and posters. Although I might be running low on totes, so
Oh my
probably
word!
should push for the posters and the t-shirts instead.
Yeah,
Or the totes.
or buy all four.
Yeah.
Buy one of each. And then buy the bag to put everything else in,
Hmm.
and carry it around. That sounds like a marvelous idea. Well, say hello to Halifax for me.
I will.
Do let us know if you're ever in the southwest of England. We would love to see you. And thank you so much for coming on. If you did ever want to send anything for the board, by the way, these are all people that have partaked in the
Nice.
the recording in the past. Please do send me something, and then and we'll pop it up there as part of
Nice.
your wall of fame. Until next time, this has been wonderful. Ella and her music. Do now go and check it out, and don't just listen to it. Do stop, say hello, follow, all of those sort of things as well, and spend some money, because it helps. Every little helps. Until next time, this has been My Music with me, Graham Cove, and Ella. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Bye.